DeAndre Hopkins sent a very clear message to his new Ravens teammates. We talk about that. Ronnie Stanley talking about why he chose to return to Baltimore and so much more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day as well. Free and available on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe over there. We're 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Here with me today is Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail, diving into more Ravens content with us. Q, busy week one of free agency. We'll dive into the full recap for Baltimore in the final part of the show, but you got DeAndre Hopkins coming in, Cooper Rush signing, and guys leaving and coming into Baltimore. It always seems to be a busy week one event for free agency. The Ravens sometimes get involved in that a lot, sometimes not so much. But for now, the Ravens are building up their roster, and we'll see what the rest of free agency brings.
Well, it looks like the roster is about taking care of their own, and starting with Ronnie Stanley, and knowing that, we need an offensive line that is going to have a veteran experience, veteran in the locker room, veteran in the offensive line meeting rooms, all those things. And I think for the Ravens, it wasn't necessarily going out and looking for a big splash free agent, but looking for a strong free agent signing from within, and takes two to tango. And I think for the Ravens, they're very fortunate that Ronnie was willing to play.
Yeah, definitely. And that offensive line market is just, it always spirals out of control, especially for guys that decent players, but might not deserve the contracts they get. And teams might regret those a couple of years down the line. For the Ravens, I don't feel like they're going to regret the Ronnie contract. You know, I feel like it's a good deal for Baltimore, and for Ronnie, he also gets a payday that he deserves, and we'll get into that. But Q, with you being a former wide receiver, the Ravens signed a veteran wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. Happened just a day after we had recorded for Locked On Ravens, you and I think it's a good signing. 1 year, $5 million deal worth up to $6 million. And for DeAndre, he made it very clear he wanted to play with Lamar Jackson. When he found out he wasn't returning to Kansas City, he ended up saying, all right, well, I'm making a list, and Baltimore is clearly at the top of that. But he did have an interesting message, a very clear message he sent to his Ravens teammates, it feels like. And he was talking after the press conference. Maybe it was before. It wasn't during the actual media availability. But he said, quote, I was watching YouTube highlights. He makes some incredible throws, and some of the interceptions as a receiver, you got to take responsibility yourself. He knows how to thread the needle. We know Q, Lamar's interceptions last season, not all of them were his fault, bouncing off of hands left and right. And I think that's kind of what DeAndre is saying here. DeAndre takes pride in catching the football. He's a very competitive guy. And obviously for Lamar, the interceptions on his stat sheet for 2024, not all of them actually ended up being, okay, well, Lamar just made a bad throw here. It's okay. Lamar actually made a good throw in the breadbasket, but whether it be Mark Andrews, Rashod, Bateman, whoever it was, that ball gets dropped. So I think for DeAndre, already kind of setting the tone a little bit. He is the veteran in that wide receiver room. Baltimore has needed one. I mean, Nelson Aguilar was that last year, but he seemingly is not coming back anymore. I think that veteran presence is going to be a good thing for Baltimore.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great thing. I think if you look at his resume, you're seeing a guy that has made the spectacular catches time in and time out. Again, when you look at where he's played in Houston and just really set the bar off of Hall of Famer Andre Johnson. And again, I look at when he went to Tennessee, some of the catches that he made there. Again, when you look at what he did in that short, time frame with the Kansas City Chiefs, made some spectacular plays. Arizona, I think he was good, did some things, but the Kyler Murray, I'm sure a little rocky for him as far as, him and the quarterback timing and connection. But that's what you get from a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins, a consistent guy, a guy who can make the contested catches, who is really all about making the flair for the dramatic. If it's a 50-50 ball, that 50-50 ball becomes a 70-30 ball real quick when you got DeAndre Hopkins as your receiver.
Yeah, and I think for DeAndre too, the fact that he's coming in on the deal that he is, it makes a lot of sense for the Ravens. I mean, you see a guy like Cooper Kupp get 3 years, $45 million, $15 million per season. I know the fan base is kind of split on this DeAndre Hopkins move, still kind of feels that way a little bit, but in my opinion, it's like, you look at Marquise Brown getting $11 million for a season. Tutu Atwell got $10 million for a season. I mean, these are wide receivers that, in my opinion, yes, DeAndre is going to be 33 when the season starts. Age is certainly a factor. He also hasn't been healthy in 3 of the last 4 years either. So that, it's another factor into the equation. But to me, it essentially is a better Odell Beckham deal for Baltimore, where I think you're getting a better player than Odell was at that point in his career, and you're getting him for $10 million less than you got Odell for at that stage of his career too. And I think AJ Hawk on the Pat McAfee show said it pretty perfectly. It's like, you're not paying him $45 million. It is $5 million for a wide receiver 3, someone who is going to be behind Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman, but he can step into a bigger role if needed, if someone has to miss some time, or if the Ravens want to run their offense a certain way. Even if he's not playing a full complement of snaps, honestly, I don't think he should be. If you have him in a role where he's able to stay healthy, I think we're going to see a bounce back from DeAndre this year.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. You got to know your value and what you bring to the table. Your agent got to negotiate it. Obviously, for this particular case, Ravens not necessarily going to be just doling out a ton of cash because they don't have a lot to work with when it comes to salary cap. But I think also for DeAndre, the fit has to work well. He's not going to be expected to be receiver 1 or 2. Yes, he will be probably receiver 3-ish 4. And that 3-ish 4 is that Nelson Aguilar, Tylan Wallace, Anthony Miller, when they all kind of went in and rotated through. I think that's where we'll see this year's iteration of DeAndre Hopkins. How can he fit in the offense with Monken? And he doesn't necessarily have to make those critical throws in bulk. He just has to make those key catches that when it comes to it, it's a, like I said, contested catch, or it's a third down catch because other guys, there's attention being paid to them. I think it's interesting because, and I know we can get into it, but I think with this offensive skill positions, the elephant in the room really is Isaiah Likely. Like, what does that dynamic look like when it comes to the offense as a whole because of the happenings of Mark Andrews and his signing? That being said, back to DeAndre Hopkins, I think it's a great thing and a great problem to have, if you will, if you want to call it a problem. I don't think, it's a bad thing to have good talent around Lamar Jackson. And I think as long as, they pace it right for him, I think he can be that receiver, not just, in those middle portions of the year where I think typically, the Ravens have more than shown. You got Lamar Jackson in the regular season, you're going to win games, lots of them. But it's when you get into that postseason, I think that's where some of his savvy and some of his catch radius and his abilities can really show up.
How important is it to have that veteran leader in the receiver room like a DeAndre? Obviously, someone who has had so much success, someone who has been around the game for so long, and someone who now does have Super Bowl experience. Obviously, the Chiefs didn't win it. Very clearly, they did not win it based off the game they played. But how important is it to have that guy in the locker room? Because, yes, Nelson Aguilar, he has been there and done that. But even for a guy like an Odell who had the accomplished career that he had, while he wasn't the same player he was in New York when he came to Baltimore, clearly he had an impact when he was there. And I feel like a lot of the young receivers, including Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman, benefited from Odell being there, even if the stat line wasn't where a lot of people needed it to be.
Yeah, and that's interesting because for Odell, remember, he was in Monken's offense before, but Lamar, that was his first year in the offense. And it was a different offense. Last year, Lamar was cooking. My goodness, man. the ability of going to the line and having full control of the offense was quite different from year 1 to year 2. I think with Odell in training camp, when I was watching him, I mean, the dude was every day when it was like a one-on-one with him and Marlon was trying to get in that work and pressing him at the line. Like, it was battle royale. And the tape showed, in my opinion, that he was winning 8 times out of 10 against Marlon. And Marlon was healthy and good at that time too. The thing was, what I also saw was that Lamar wasn't even looking that way because he was trying to figure out the read of the offense and okay, this is the concept. I'm going to go with this and figure out this concept. And it wasn't, Odell's the backside receiver. Okay, I got a chance to, throw it to him because of the situation of the defense. And so I think that plus, Odell had some banged up injuries that kind of slowed down the progress. I think also them trying to, get Bateman involved more and more in the offense to kind of get him kick-started. I think both of those guys who've had, their share of ding-ups, if you will, that slowed down that receiving core progress. You look at now, it would be interesting if they didn't sign DeAndre Hopkins, but they did bring back Odell. I think it would have been better because, and here's why, because I think for Odell, he would have known the system. I think he and Lamar would have had even better chemistry. I think Lamar has just, blossomed even more so as, I mean, you can't stop me. Whatever you throw at me, I got this. That was his swagger and superpower last year. That was his poise. Heck, we were like talking about how his mom was like, boy, you better run the ball a little bit more, because he was so just comfortable with, like, I can sit in the pocket. I can make all kind of throws when I want to. And the guys in the rush, they're not going to get me. DeAndre now needs to get on the same page. He's the one that's now going to have to learn the offense and all the things. So I think, yes, the Odell Beckham signing was smart. It was important. It was needed. Remember, it was about the way in which, Steve Bisciotti was kind of like, all right, well, what are we doing here? We got a franchise quarterback. What are we doing here? Are we going to sign him? Like, what's up? And sure enough, you sign a big-time receiver, which then, of course, Eric DeCosta works his magic, and next thing you know, they have a deal in place for, Lamar. You got your offensive coordinator, you got your receiver. Here comes Lamar. Okay, cool. Let's go. Now you got DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre is going to be in a position where he's not necessarily even going to be receiver 2. He's, like I said, he's receiver 3-4.
He's a super big competitor. He loves to win, and the Ravens have needed someone with his skill set on the roster for a while now. A player that has the caliber that DeAndre has had over the course of his career. He's been that guy. So DeAndre should be a really good addition to the Ravens. And coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about a really good re-addition in Ronnie Stanley, who had some things to say about Baltimore. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting it down at the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still talking Ravens football with you here on this Tuesday. Aren't you glad we don't have to speculate anymore? Remember how many shows we spent speculating on DeAndre Hopkins, said, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Dating back multiple years now. Now it's real. Now we can actually say DeAndre's on the Ravens. This, to me, I'm happy for you, because now we don't have to speculate. We can say it's real now.
All I know is the offseason is the bane of my existence. I mean, again, I've said it time and time again. This is your wheelhouse. You love it. You absorb it. It's awesome. And I'm just going for the ride. However, yes, this offseason seems to have hit different. I know that, the offseason of controversy and fun was figuring out Lamar's contract and all those things. Now, if I'm the Atlanta Falcons, which I'm glad we don't have to cover them, you talk about putting egg in your face. My goodness, man, Kirk Cousins and all that whole fiasco for missing out on an opportunity to at least entertain, trying to do everything you can to get a franchise MVP quarterback. Put that aside. This year, we got things to talk about. We can go ahead and bite into it and unwind and this is what's up. Because from a Ravens aspect of things, they might not have done the big splash where they went out and got Derrick Henry. And I know you and I, we in season kind of talk about that. And that wasn't really a bad speculating because it was a good opportunity, or would have been a great opportunity, if you will. AFC Championship game, didn't necessarily run the ball effectively, didn't really have the true horses that you would have liked to have had. And I think Lamar Jackson, it cost him a bit. I think last year, obviously, offseason wide, Derrick Henry comes aboard. What up? We're about to do this. And sure enough, he did it. And that was awesome. So right now, we got DeAndre Hopkins. I'm excited about it. And ain't no speculating.
No speculation. DeAndre is here in Baltimore. I think Ronnie Stanley's back in Baltimore. He had a Zoom media availability yesterday and had, I thought, some very cool things to say. He gave his reasoning for coming back to the Ravens, gave multiple different answers on it. But the one that I'll read out here, first of all, says, it just goes back to the fact that they drafted me straight out of college, took a chance on me, so I'm always going to give them first dibs out of respect. Everybody has different mindsets, Q, when it comes to their free agency. Obviously, this being a part of it and figuring out, what you wanted for your career. And obviously, Ronnie wants, whatever he wants for his career. But some players just say, hey, you know what? I've been with a team. It's time to move on. Doesn't matter. Everybody will have a shot at me. But Ronnie really feels the connection to Baltimore. Baltimore feels the connection to him. And it feels really cool to just have him put it out there for everybody to hear. That's look, yeah, probably could have gotten some more money on the market. We all have acknowledged that. Ronnie Stanley was the best offensive lineman on this market. But the fact that he let the Ravens kind of have that first in and say, this is where I want to be. Now, of course, he ended up saying, I wanted to be paid a fair deal based off of how he played, but he wasn't going to go out there and break the bank the way that he could have. I think it's really an awesome thing that Ronnie kind of did that for Baltimore because it helps the Ravens out with their cap situation, and Ronnie still gets paid, I think, a very fair contract for his services.
Yeah, remember he got a pay cut, $7.5 million the year before. And that's where all the, buzz was flying around, whether or not he was going to be on a team or, what is training camp going to look like for Ronnie Stanley and his injury, and is he going to get back to his form? And I think, the bigger picture was he went all the way through training camp. I know I was there watching my son Qadry play, and I was like, okay, there's Ronnie. Here we go again, number 79. Okay, there's Ronnie again. And day in and day out, some of them other young dudes, they were taking some time off and not really getting into a lot of the scrimmages or whatever. Nope, not 79. He was out there every single time, every single moment. Boom, regular season. He was out there every single time. You could rely on 79. And so I think for him, it was good. It was a validation, if you will, for him to be like, look, I know I could play, and I know if I'm healthy, I'm going to play and be one of the best in the league. He showed that he was one of the best in the league. Look at when Ronnie is in there and how well the offensive juggernaut that was the Ravens run game with Derrick Henry went. They were able to do so many creative blocking schemes. You really, as a defensive coordinator, it was difficult to say, hey, we can pin down exactly what the Ravens are going to do. We just got to stop it. Oh, no, you didn't know. You knew nothing. Because you had a healthy Ronnie Stanley, gave you the flexibility to kind of go across that offensive line with different blocking schemes. And it puts the defense on notice, and he played extremely well. And mind you, this is the AFC North. At that time, it was Hubbard and Hendrickson. At that time, it was, J.J. Watt and Highsmith. At that time, it's Myles Garrett roaming the landscape of the offensive line. and you got your anchor point in Ronnie Stanley playing all 17 games. I think there's a reason why Ronnie Stanley was feeling comfortable with coming back. And I think there's also a reason why, the Ravens were like, good, thank you. We'll pay you. And we're glad that you are back. Because those other teams, if he did get to free agency, them other teams would have way outbidded the Ravens just because of their salary cap.
Yeah, and we know the reports are that teams like the Commanders, the Patriots, the Chiefs, all were going to be involved. They're going to be involved in the Ronnie Stanley sweepstakes. And so who knows if Baltimore would have had a shot with the money that those teams were going to be willing to throw at Ronnie Stanley, but doesn't matter. We don't have to speculate. It didn't happen. What did happen is that Ronnie Stanley is back with the Ravens, and he said, that he's realizing how rare of a thing it is to be able to spend 10 plus years of a career with the same team. He was really appreciative of that. But then he also talked a little bit about some of the reasons why was not just the fact that Baltimore was loyal to him and, they drafted him, but he also said, quote, my decision to come back, the players for sure had the biggest role in that, the locker room and the type of players that we have, including Lamar. Said he and Lamar were talking a lot, but said the players are the biggest driver of why I like being in Baltimore. The Ravens have a culture they've created, Q. Obviously, they're one of the organizations that are known for being upstanding, and the locker room, they take a lot of value in who comes into that locker room. And we've had a bunch of different conversations on that, but to hear that come out of Ronnie's mouth too, of just being like, hey, it's almost like I love my teammates. I love being here with these guys. I want to go to war with these guys. That to me is a really cool thing because again, it's rare. There are teams where people do not feel that way. And people are like, man, it's kind of like a weird locker room here. I don't really vibe with these guys here. I want to go somewhere else. But it feels like for Baltimore, Ronnie Stanley really appreciates the fact that his teammates are truly his brothers on and off the field.
It's so cool. I think, the pro game is about what have you done for me lately? The pro game is about, I got to get mine and rightly so, because the team is going to get theirs. The league is definitely going to get theirs. And you have a small window before that next whomever, as you become the old whomever, is going to try to get his. And so you walk that fine line of team loyalty, locker room chemistry and friendships, bonding, brotherhoods, all those, really cool moralistic goals and values, which are important to the ultimate of winning. But yeah, what is it when you retire and they kick you to the curb? Those values don't mean much. So it's refreshing that, Ronnie felt that way, but it's good though, in the sense that Ronnie got paid. It wasn't like this is some free handout and, Ronnie is just gonna, doesn't matter. Y'all just gonna pay me whatever. No, they gave him a good chunk of change. And I think it is about him feeling it. And it's about them feeling good about their salary cap and their situation. And what did he say? I'm trying to win a Super Bowl. We are trying to win a Super Bowl. We, all those things. And that's good. I think that's really good, I think, for what, ultimately you can do. Mekhi Becton, who played for the Jets, first rounder, really good player, but really struggled at the Jets. And that was a culture and a mindset of losing there. And he was like, one of the punching bags. Well, he goes to a winning mindset in the Philadelphia Eagles, and to the point where he revives his career and he's winning. Now he signs, I forget where he signed, but he's like a free agent that signed a fat contract. But I promise you this, his whole aura and feeling about who he is when he was in that locker room and how he was able to just revitalize career, and that jazz was important. And I think for guys like Ronnie Stanley, you could go some places, but you also recognize that you want to enjoy coming to work. Your body is going to get beat down. You want to enjoy coming to work. And I think for Ronnie Stanley, for him to sign with the Ravens, sign back with them and all the things, it shows that he enjoys coming to work. And that's a freeing feeling to have.
Yeah, and I think, Ronnie, also the quote that you mentioned about the Super Bowl, and him saying, quote, "We've broken so many records the last few years. I don't think we really care about it. To be honest, the only thing we really care about is winning a Super Bowl. Definitely unfinished business. I don't think anyone is really happy." It feels like that's the mindset both he and his teammates share. The organization, the fan base obviously shares that as well. So, I mean, this team is motivated. Ronnie Stanley, and he also talked about, for the guys that have been with the team, like, they've broken records. They've had fun years like that, but it's not about that necessarily anymore. It's about, hey, what are we going to do to get over the hump? How are we going to win the Super Bowl? How are we going to get there? I think that's the most important thing that the Ravens are looking at. And Ronnie and a lot of other guys on the Ravens embody that, because it's fun to have stats. It's fun to break records. It's fun to win games in the regular season. But when it matters, the Super Bowl is the big thing that I know you and I have been talking about forever with this team, trying to see how they can actually get over that hump.
So weird, too, because winning, the timing of winning, all those things, like it's such a fine line, and you're not guaranteed anything. That's what makes, I think, dynasties like the Patriots and the Chiefs so just incredibly remarkable. It's going to be a hard schedule yet again. It's going to be a scenario where, yet again, you're going to be going up against the Jamar Chases. O.T. Higgins going to be coming for you. Did we see? Oh, yes, we did. Pickens got his boy. He's going to be his running mate, and DK Metcalf. DK ain't going to be sitting there acting all like, oh, gee, this is the AFC North. No, he's going to be trying to prove himself too. So let's look at this whole picture that I've just gone on a tangent about when it comes to that fine line of winning.
Baltimore has the dues to do it. It's just a matter of, can they get over that hump? We'll see how they try to approach it this season. But Ronnie, going to be a really, really big part of that. Coming up in the fun part of the show, though, we're going to talk about some of the other moves that Baltimore has made, including Mark Andrews, Ben Cleveland, and a new backup quarterback in town. So be sure to stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way on Locked On Ravens.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown. Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup. Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free. It's your team every day.
Back here, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still talking Ravens football with you. Q, Mark Andrews, we've talked about it, you and I, speculating, your favorite thing to do, on what the future for Mark would be, whether it be them keeping him on the roster or trading him, cutting him. The Ravens end up letting his roster bonus trigger. So essentially what that means is that they're going to pick it up. It's $4 million, and that is on the books now, regardless of if the Ravens decide to move on or not. So that makes it very likely he's probably going to stay on the roster this next year. There's still a chance they can move on, but it doesn't really make much sense to guarantee the bonus and then move on when they could have just avoided it altogether by moving off of him and not having to pay the bonus money. So Mark, with that in mind, the fan base definitely split on that too. Some people obviously feel like the $11 million in cap space would have been more valuable than having Mark on the team. Others believe that Mark is more valuable to have than the cap space with him and Isaiah Likely. But you mentioned it earlier in the show with Isaiah Likely being one of these big X factors for not just the Ravens offense, but this entire Ravens team in 2025. And obviously the Mark Andrews decision is going to impact Likely and what his role is going to be this season.
It is. And I think when you look at a young player like an Isaiah Likely, who extremely talented, made plays rightly so of his own, there comes a point in time where you want to be tight end one. What does that look like as far as negotiations when the team is like, yeah, we got a tight end one, but you're saying, okay, but that tight end one ain't young like me, and I have shown that I can make plays like him. And yet there is in the nuance of it all, yeah, but that tight end one is Lamar's go-to guy, and he's shown it. And then I'm sure his people are going to be like, yeah, but that tight end one, from not necessarily trying to throw Mark under the bus, but he didn't make the most critical play that he needed to make. I think it's time for a new tight end one. And with it comes the kind of uneased tension when Isaiah Likely and company, that he's in the last portion of his deal, is probably want to feel like he wants to be, loved. I know that, we just finished talking about Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie felt the love of I wanted to be here, and all that could have gone to the open market. I'd be curious to know, and I don't know, but I'd be curious to know Isaiah Likely's thoughts as far as wanting to feel the love. And the way you get the love felt is by the team ponying up and showing that, you're our guy. And that's via money. I mean, that's just how the business works. So I am curious, what is it that they're going to do with this now elephant in the room of Isaiah Likely and his contract? And are they just going to sit back and be content? But is he going to sit back and be content, or how is that all going to play out? We don't know, but it will be interesting to see this offseason.
Yeah, it'll certainly be an interesting dynamic, because with, less snaps that Isaiah Likely gets, if he doesn't get as many, well, is that going to impact the negotiations this offseason when it comes to whether the Ravens pay him X amount of money or Y amount of money? It could certainly play a factor in that. Now let's do a little rapid fire Q, because the Ravens made a couple moves over the weekend. Ben Cleveland coming back was a shock to, I think, almost every single person based off of how his season went. His career is gone for the Ravens, and obviously the offseason trouble that he got in. So that was one move. And then Cooper Rush coming in as the Ravens backup quarterback, paying him a deal up to $12.2 million at $6.2 in general. So $3.1 million per season. Upgraded the backup quarterback spot, but I think those moves both also have had some controversial points for the fan base in them as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for the Ben Cleveland deal, I'm going to say I don't know. What does I don't know mean? I don't know when, obviously, the Ravens showed Ronnie Stanley some love, vice versa. Ben Cleveland seems to have been poo-pooed, and kind of outsider Tyler Linderbaum hurting his neck, and that being a question mark as far as training camp, and then, Ben just stepping in, doing a really, solid job. I mean, he was like a forgotten man, and John Harbaugh kind of was like pushed him to the side, whereas the offseason issue, usually the Ravens okay, well, that shows that you're not focused for yourself. Bye-bye. But he's here. And I think it's intriguing to me that happened. Obviously, you got, a role player in Cooper Rush, Josh Johnson. I know a lot as far as, the media and local media and beat writers are always like, yeah, Josh, but there was always something there. Obviously, he was a great, sounding board and consigliere, if you will, with T. Martin and him talking with Lamar on the sideline. So I think those things were really super important. But now it changes and it shifts to Cooper Rush, and I'm sure Cooper Rush is not going to beat Josh Johnson. And so what? We'll see how that all unfolds. So, yeah, some interesting moves, but that's what the Ravens do. And there's going to be a lot more interesting moves that we're going to hopefully be able to talk about this offseason.
Yeah. A couple of big ones, couple of not so big ones, but the Ravens, they're trying to improve their team, even if it is just at a backup position. So lots more to come here on Locked On Ravens. And Q, I always appreciate you checking in, hopping on, talking Ravens football. Please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on here.
Yeah, man. So the biggest thing I'm doing and loving and having a passion for is missile training. And so missiletraining.com is where you can find me. It's all about human movement and sports performance, whether it be individuals, whether it be team training, doesn't matter the sport. At the same time, if you are an older person, you're looking for fitness and wellness, I'm your guy. When it comes to missiletraining.com, you can reach out to me there and interact with me. Of course, WJZ, we have our purple shows that go year round. Purple Playbook. You can find me on there from time to time. And during the season, it's Purple Pregame, which is every single week. But every single week, off season and in season, it's all about Kevin Oestreicher and I, as we are here on this channel, Locked On Ravens, talking, breaking it down with you, giving you all the love and all the deets on what Locked On Ravens and what the Ravens are doing.
Q is the man. He knows his stuff. Be sure to check him out over at missiletraining.com and be sure to check him in here every week on Locked On Ravens. Q, appreciate you as always. And thank you to everybody who watched, listened today to Locked On Ravens. Of course, be sure on the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage. We'll be right back here tomorrow talking more Ravens. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.